Isn't fire the most mesmerising thing? I think it just, the way it just captivates us, and our mind wanders while we stare into fire. It's quite an abstract looking thing, and I'm starting this video on purpose with the fire because I think the things that we like in fire, or the things we like in this ash, are all the things that would probably appeal to us in an abstract painting. It's the same kind of aesthetic. Australian artist Tim Storia, he says, he's got this beautiful analogy of fire where he says fire is like the ancient TV, and our minds drift into the same meditative state that it does when we're watching TV as it does when we're looking into fire. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that's a way of thinking into painting in an abstract manner. All right, let's jump into the little studio and we'll talk about that more. Right, so in this one, now we're back in the little studio, and we're going to learn how to go from this, which we did before, and we're going to end up here. And there it is, done. So let's rewind now, because I've just finished it all. Let's rewind, and hopefully you're at this stage. If you're not at this stage, right? If your canvas or canvases don't look like this with the charcoal and the water and the white paint, you need to go back and watch the other videos because you're not up to speed yet. But once you're like this and it's dry, now we're going to do this to it. We're going to put all this texture. I'll slow down a bit because it's getting a bit blurry. And put all this texture on it. Okay, let's go. So we want to look at putting some texture into your painting. If I just quickly grab the painting, I'll just grab a small one. We've done some charcoal, we've done some white paint. There's a few little lumps of paint, but it's not textured enough. So we need to really lift the texture on this to, give it a, maybe you want to emulate rock or concretey, rocky, textured ground sort of appearance. So what are we going to use? We're going to use a variety of materials. You've obviously got some impasto medium. Hopefully you grabbed some of this stuff and took it home. Not a whole tub. You guys dispensed it into another tub. But I'm just going to quickly go through some of the materials I've got. You're going to need some containers. Just keep washing these containers and keeping them. You'd be amazed how many you collect very quickly in about 2 weeks if you take note of every container of dip and butter and everything that gets used in your house. And the other thing I've collected as well is some cardboard. It's good if you can get it where it's not glossy on either side, but if not, it's a favourite Lemonade brand here, and you can just use the matte side of it and ignore the glossy side of it. Doesn't matter, right? So we'll shred up the matte side of it. These little palette knives, I just grabbed out of the kitchen. Just go and steal these out of your kitchen. So I've got a fork and a butter knife and a cutting knife. Okay. If you're fortunate enough to have a Stanley knife, they're much more useful, or a little stencil knife are probably the best thing for what we want to do. But just some tools, some implements like this. Everything you're going to do will wash off. Maybe don't grab the best silver. Maybe go and grab the older stuff. If you happen to get up to your local Bunnings type hardware shop, these are $1 out of the plasterers. Out of the plasterers section in the trade section. So this is a plasterer's plastic spatula. Maybe get 3. In the paint section they sell these in packs of 3. These are really good and they're really cheap as well. Other than that, I've got some sand. This is actually bricklayer sand that was left over from when we had our extensions done. I just happened to still have a half a bag of it. And this is dirt out of the garden, and it's got all sorts of organic matter in it, which is kind of cool. That will really build up texture in our painting. So now I'm going to show you how to use it all. So cardboard's no good to us flat. I mean, it'll build up a bit of texture. Oh, you know what else I forgot to, I'm here. The other thing I forgot to mention, I'll just show you. Quite a few of you took home this tissue paper as well. So we will use tissue paper. Toilet paper is really useful. You can scrunch it up and mix it with the paint. It becomes like paper mache. But tissue paper is really good. Hopefully you've grabbed some tissue paper from school. If you didn't, not many people get newspapers these days, but newspaper is really, really, really handy. So we'll use that as well. I'll show you how to use that. And then paper towel, tissue paper, anything really. Anything that's going to sort of material old fabric. Anyway, I just want to show you how to treat cardboard, because it's no good to us like this, okay? This is corrugated cardboard, so it's got 2 layers of cardboard and it's got corrugations through the middle. The way you tell if it's corrugated cardboard, most boxes are, like beer cartons and any kind of produce box, you know, tissue paper boxes, any box in the supermarket will be corrugated cardboard. When you look side on to it, you'll see this corrugation just there. Okay, so if it's got that, what we want to do is we want to peel a layer of it off. I've sort of started one here, and we get this kind of effect. Now, as we peel this layer off, we're going to damage it, and that's fine. But I'm just going to show you how to do it. Getting it started is the tricky bit. Just going to get rid of it. Get rid of that bit. So I'll get it started. I'll use the kitchen knife because not everyone has one of these, okay? Mind you, they are dirt cheap from a hardware shop. So again, but they're super sharp, so be careful. What you want to do, I'll try and work this way. What you want to do is you want to get in there and you just want to open up, there it goes, and you just want to open it up. Can you see that? I'm going to work backhand here. And then all you do, see how I'm just running the tip of the knife along it? I'm just loosening that top layer of cardboard. Now I'm holding it down with my thumb here and I'm using my fingers. It's sort of, you just got to manipulate it a bit. This is actually going better than the Stanley knife. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And this is how you strip out. Ow! Now what I just did there was I'm not getting it all, so I'm actually using the back of the knife because it's a bit more brutal and it scratches away at it. Now some cardboards are easier to do this to than others, but what we want is that texture, that corrugated texture, okay? Now, when we rip this, like you can cut it with scissors, but if you rip it and if you rip across the grain, like on a diagonal like that, then you start to get these really nice soft bits here. And then that, when it's glued onto a painting, you know, you can tear this into the shapes that you want it. I don't know if you can see that, but you can tear it into shapes and start to glue it into areas to get some texture like that. Okay, so I'm just going to rip a bit of this stuff up now and prepare it, and I'll just build up the texture on this painting, and we'll get going with a whole bunch of different techniques. Now you don't have to use all these techniques. You might just go, I'm just using cardboard, or you might say, I hate that cardboard stuff. I might just use the impasto medium with sand. It's entirely up to you, okay? But we do ask that you build up a bunch of texture. Now I'm just going to jump now into a couple of artists who use different techniques for building texture up, and we'll just have a look at what it looks like in some fairly well-known artists, abstract painters' work. Well, this is artist Anselm Kiefer. Anselm Kiefer is a German abstract painter who anchors his work or hooks his work into German history, particularly around the Holocaust and the Nazi experience of World War II. And so a lot of his work deals with the darkness and the heaviness of that period in German history. And a lot of his landscape imagery comes from the landscape all out around Auschwitz, which was the infamous extermination camp. If we just zoom in on this though, you'll notice he uses some key elements in his work. He uses text, and you can see text across the top there.
he uses raw materials as well as paint. So he often will use straw, tar, molten lead, clay. He'll use materials that come from the natural landscape, harsh materials, like materials that are quite harsh and raw and unforgiving. They are landscape based, and you'll see in his work, there's a clear horizon line here, but there is no doubt that his work is highly textured, and he uses all sorts of materials. There's burnt areas in these paintings as well. He puts a blowtorch to the surface of his paintings. This is Aida Temesco. She's an Australian artist. She, just to brighten things up, I guess, to get away from all that brown, she paints in quite vivid, bright colours. What's really significant about Aida Temesco's painting is often, like this one, you get these spots and sort of focus points in her work. But often in a Temesco, what it's about is about the edge. So this edge around here or along the bottom of the painting. And even up the left-hand side, there's a very subtle exposure of what's underneath. So she builds up layer upon layer upon layer. And she starts dark and finishes light. And I think that's the path we're going to go down. We're going to start dark and bright. First up, we're going to lay lots of dark, bright colours down, and then we're going to finish sort of light and a bit duller. And you can see in the top left-hand corner of this painting, that's as zoomed as I can get. Up in the top left-hand corner, there's little bits of yellow and red poking through underneath that paint from the painting that came before underneath. So there's lots of layering and scrubbing back and layering and scrubbing back. You can see down in the bottom corner of this painting, there's patches of really bright orange and yellow poking through. And she scratches back into the paint while it's half dry. With the handle of the brush, she turns the brush around and sort of starts carving back in, almost drawing in a way and exposing the colour underneath. So if we're going to do that, you've really got to think about what colour you're going to lay down first. If you want really bright colours to glow through underneath, almost like burning embers, then you've got to lay those colours down first, and then put your duller colours over the top. So you've got to be thinking ahead a little bit. She gets quite gestured and again, here she is carving back into the paint. You can see where she's carved back into the paint while it's wet. Brett Whiteley, not really known for his abstract works, but he did a lot of abstract work. He was an Australian modernist painter. Lots of big areas of rest in a Whiteley. You get these areas of rest, and then you get this intensity. So that's something to consider. I'll talk later on about rest areas and intense areas. So you get a lot of that in Whiteley. What you get in Whiteley is also a really great tone, almost black, and then we get these really bright light colours. Quite what we call figurative Brett Whiteley's work. But again, based in the landscape, you can sort of see a horizon up there. So he gives little hints to figures and horizons and sky and he brightens it up. He does get quite bright, Brett Whiteley, and I think what's a real strength in his work is his use of line. So his line takes us around a painting. It drags our eye around, and it creates little areas of focus in the painting. So we've got a little area of focus down here in the right corner. And we've got big sweeping lines across large areas of rest, and then there'll be another focus point in the middle. So he drags us around his work with these what we call vector lines, and they give great balance and direction to his painting. He also, you'll notice with Brett Whiteley, a real battle between warm and cool. This sort of cool blue to this warm orangey tones, and then back down to blues again. You'll see that there's blue actually poking in underneath that dark brown on the left there. So some things to consider in moving forward about colour. All right, let's get into the texture first. So how do we do this kind of thing to our painting? How do we build this texture up? All right, I'll show you now. All right, let's mix up some solutions. So I've got some of my containers here, which you can see, and I'm just going to show you. There's a little knack to mixing sand with impasto medium. So the impasto medium can be used
completely on its own. Okay, it's thick enough and pasty enough that you can pretty much just scoop up the impasto medium. Now remember, it's white. It's not clear. It will not dry clear. It dries white. And it will, I'm just going to use the stuff out of the lid actually. So it dries white and it sticks everything to everything. It's super, super adhesive. Takes a while to dry, but you can literally pick it up like that, and then you can literally just, well, here I go. You can pretty much like paste it on like that. Okay. Now when you do it, leave lots of little trenches and gaps. Don't smear it all on and smooth it out. You're not troweling a driveway, you know, with concrete. So I'll do it again just here. I'll just demo it. You kind of just like lay it on and leave the drawing there, right? Move in between the drawing. So build it up that way. You can also use a fork and get some texture back in. I'm not using the fork that way. I'm using the fork this way. And keep changing direction, and that'll give you that. That'll just give you a little bit of texture. Now this will wash out of your this will wash out. Okay, so yeah, just use a fork and build up that texture like that. If you want, a good thing to do is use the fork and then knock some of it back. So you get these, like, can you see how there's a smooth bit and there's this corrugated bit in the middle. So kind of, that's a bit, some of this texture might be a bit too much. So just send some of it back. All right, and little wipes like that are really good. Pick some of it up, wipe it in here. Actually, it goes a fair way, this stuff. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of I think the fork texture is a bit too much. The other thing you can do is you can use a brush. So you can pick it up with a brush, and holding your brush like that, yeah, you can just kind of smear it in to get all different textures. Now, while we're there, what you can do then is you can do this. You can literally put the sand on it, and you can work it in with a brush, but it does tend to fall off. See that? And it's sort of a bit hard to work in. So I'm going to show you quickly how to mix up a solution of the stuff. You get a container. You get a container and you get a bit of pasto medium in there. All right? And then you get some sand, you know, about that much. It's like a cooking show, this, isn't it? And then you get a little bit of water to wet the sand. What the water does is it lubricates the sand, and then it all mixes in beautifully. Now it's pretty runny, so at this point, this now allows me to add a bit more sand. And I put quite a bit in there. And now we've got a super gritty impasto medium that's so good. So what you do with that then is you can work that in with a brush. So you can mix this in the same way, okay? Old clothes, wipe your hands on your pants. You're gonna need a drop sheet. I'm doing this out in my garage. It's too much to do it anywhere else. Okay, so I've just moved back a bit so it's easier for you to see. But what you can do, I'm sort of, this is a bit awkward because I'm trying to angle it so that you can see it. But what you can do with the sandy stuff, where you've got your sand solution, is you can just sort of smear it on like that. But the other thing you can do is you can use your brush and literally like pick lumps of it up with a brush and smear it around. Notice how I'm holding the brush, right? I'm holding the brush in this way where I'm using it more like a palette knife. Now it's getting grey from the charcoal, and that's fine, but I'm starting to build this texture up. Just lay it on. Now there'll be all gaps and stuff, and all those gaps and things are really good. They're all really useful, okay? Because they're going to pick paint up and give you things to paint into later on. So kind of create a band of texture, I guess. I'm going to put the painting now up on the easel, and you'll see how I use like a band of cardboard and a band of this stuff, and then I'll scan the camera across it. So I'm just cleaning this off. This is where it's really good to have a few of these tools, but I'll just clean this one off quickly. It's good to have a couple of old rags lying around to wipe things off. Now I'm going to use the corrugated cardboard, and I'm thinking I'm going to have a band of corrugated cardboard across here, like wriggling its way across, and then I'll have the sandy stuff underneath. Okay, so I'm going to get myself a decent amount of impasto medium. Now paint will do this, all right, but I'm going to lay this impasto medium right where I want to put the cardboard, just like that. Now you can also use paint in this manner. We're going to glue with it. We're going to use it like a glue. So if you don't have much impasto medium, or you don't have any impasto medium at all, then use glue for this job. I'm just going to get this in there. I'll just lay it across like that. That's enough. Now here's a thing I want to think about. Do I want the corrugations going horizontal, or do I want them going vertical? Because they'll have quite an effect on which way you drag the viewer's eye around. This is where we talk about artist, audience, world. You're the artist, this is the artwork, and now you're thinking about your audience. What do you want the audience experience to be? Do you want them to think vertically, and do you want to sort of get that across to them, or do you want to think horizontally? Now this stuff takes a little while to dry, but I'm just going to tear this up into like bits, and I'll sort of, there's a horizontal bit, and then I'm going to go vertical again and just start sticking it in. Now we don't want some patchy kindergarten craft looking thing. We want it to be quite deliberate and strategic. So now I'm gonna fill in all the little gaps with it and tile it up like a mosaic. But the effect will be, oops. Now you might need to grab some more impasto medium and glue it down a bit more. So I'm actually going to have a fat sort of area. I'm going to have a fat area around the edge here. So it's going to go fat, and then it's going to go thin, and then it's going to go fat again, like a clamp in like a bend in a river. See, I keep making those little landscape references. I keep thinking about landscape as I go. I mean, that is our starting point. So now, ooh, wasn't expecting that, but anyway, there it is. I just tore off in a funny shape. And that can sort of glue in there. That one there. So can you see I need a little bit there, so I might just grab a lump on the old finger, and I'll get that in there, like that. Now I'm leaving a gap there. I want to leave, so like, if you lived in this part of the painting, I want you to have a way through a gate. so you got your way out through the painting, and they're called exit points. It's actually a thing that we talk about in painting. We talk about exit points. Now, exit points are normally a patch of sky in the far back of a painting. If you look at Manet's Le Déjeuner Célèbre, which is Luncheon on the Grass, there is a clear, go and have a look at it, Edouard Manet's Luncheon on the Grass. That's a naked woman and a couple of clothes, man and a woman in the back having a picnic. There's a whole other story to that painting, we won't get into it now, but at the very back of it is a patch of sky. And that patch of sky is called an exit point. It's really important. And it just gives it breathing space. And I guess breathing space is important. Okay. You know, you've got to have some rest areas in a painting like this. You've got to have some rest. It can't be all texture. It's got to have some rest areas. I just picked up a bit like that and sort of splodge it in there. And as soon as it gets predictable, like it's starting to become this like round patch, break that. As soon as anything gets to be critical, as soon as you start painting in the one direction, as soon as you start gluing everything down the one way, break it, right? Recognize it. Don't fall into a comfortable habit of painting in the same way all the time. Challenge yourself. You know, try some new tones, try some new directions in how you're sticking everything down. Alright, I'm happy with that. I'll just pick up some more of this impasto medium. I use it up, don't waste material, right? If it's there, use it. Now I'm not just smearing it anywhere. See this line? See this shape here? I'm leaving that the same as I left that. I want the texture in between the lines. You might want the texture on the lines, but I just want to work in between those areas. And I'm being a bit careful now. But I'm going to use, this stuff's expensive, I'm going to use every last steric of it. Nice. Got some impasto on my fork, and might just start forking that in. And interestingly, the fork makes a similar texture to the corrugated cardboard. So I might do some fake corrugated cardboard with the fork. And I'll get up close in a second, I'll show you how it looks. But at the moment, it's just, I just need to get your fingers into it, doesn't matter, it'll get a bit messy. You'll notice that I'm not wearing my church shirt. It's not my best Sunday shirt, you know, this is my work shirt. So get yourself a t-shirt or something, some clothes that you're going to be prepared to mess up. One last thing, the tissue paper, you can tear it up, scrunch it up on there, and then what I do is I turn it over. So I've got impasto medium on both sides, and you sort of scrunch it. See how I've scrunched it? Toilet paper's the same. I know toilet paper's a bit of a commodity at the moment. It comes like paper pulp. But that's how you use those, and newspaper's the same. Okay? And newspaper's great because you get this great newsprint sort of effect with it as well. Oh, where's my newspaper? I'll tear a bit off. So what you do with the newspaper is you can just tear little bits like that into little shapes and you know, put a bit in. Is that on camera? Just off camera. All right, I'll put another bit just about there. So I'm just going to sort of pick it up from here, and again, I like to turn it over or pick up a bit of impasto from somewhere else and just glue it in. Good to have a variety of these textures and things in your painting. So now I've started to run a newspaper, I'm going to keep it going. And you know, these things are the best implements for this sort of work. Are we still on camera? We are. Good. Last little bit, I'll just put a smear in there and smear it on. Now, your hands are going to get, you know, whoop, there it is. You're going to have to wash your hands, but you get the idea. So there's the toilet paper, there's the tissue paper, and there's the newspaper. So, you know, adapt, use a bit of variety, use variety materials. In this, I've got the sand mixed with the impasto medium. I've got the corrugated cardboard that I stripped back. I've got toilet paper, I've got tissue paper, I've got newspaper. This is a really beautiful build-up of texture now. I'll just pick this up. We'll just get back from it again. Got some really, I'm going to get right in close. So, check out that. If I get it side on, it's got it's quite thick and lumpy. Quite thick and lumpy, which is what we want, because all of that will pick up paint as we paint over it later on when we put colour in it. All right, I'm going to grab the camera and I'll show you up close what's going on. Let's get up close. All right, there's my cardboard.
So it's sort of going from quite wide and it narrows down. And then I sort of some gaps and I got a little floaty island out here, and then we fatten out again. And I did some fake corrugated cardboard with the fork. See that? And I've kind of just, oh, there's some more. And then down here, let's have a look at that. Can you see how I've used that? I've left these lines here, so that the impasto medium with the sand in it sits in between the lines. Now, I can't paint on this until that is absolutely dry. So guess what you do now? You put this outside in the sun, or you hit it with your hairdryer. But it's going to take a good day to dry, maybe even overnight. Okay, so it's you now got to be patient. But that's as much texture as you want to build up. All right, I'm really happy with it actually, looking really good. Alrighty, off you go, have a go, try it out. You know, one last thing, you can't go wrong here, okay? If you make a schmozzle mess of it, which you probably think you might be doing, you can always paint over it. I could paint this whole thing white, redraw in charcoal, off we go again. But it'll have all this great texture, okay? I actually paint over, in my studio, I have a drop sheet. I buy a new piece of canvas, I put the drop sheet on the floor, that's my drop sheet, the big piece of canvas, and I paint like this and let everything drop all over the canvas on the floor. After about a year, I pick that drop sheet up, because it's painting canvas, with all the blobs and glumps and things on it, and I stretch that onto frames and then I paint onto that, because it saves me doing this all the time. It saves me building up this texture because I've already got it all over the drop sheet. So, and I just paint them white and then off I go. So if you make a mess of this, don't worry. You can just paint over it and then we'll keep going. But don't throw it out. I mean, all this texture is all good. Even if it's like everywhere, that's awesome. So anyway, it's time to go and put this in the sun, and I'll see you guys in the next video where we're going to add some colour.